Hello, my name is David Ellis, and this is the first of our NetAdmin video series, and it's going to be on the topic of network discovery. So why is network discovery important? Well, it's important as a network administrator or systems administrator to know your network. You need to know where your ingress points are in the network. You need to know how your switches are connected to each other. You need to understand where your servers connect into your network, so you have a good understanding of the traffic flow in your network. It's also your network, and you really ought to know it. It's kind of part of your job. So it's also important for troubleshooting. If you truly understand your network, you understand how your traffic flows, you understand how switches are configured, you understand how your servers connect into the network, then it's going to make it much easier for you to troubleshoot. If you're constantly trying to figure out how things are connected, where traffic's coming in, where traffic's going, then you're not actually troubleshooting the problems, you're learning your network, and then you manage to get around to troubleshooting a problem. So scalability. So again, if you understand your network, then you will understand what your limitations are with your current network and when you need to actually upgrade that equipment, or if you have the ability to upgrade that equipment because you know the pieces and parts that entail your network. And life cycle. Equipment runs out. It runs out of support. It runs out of sale. It gets old, and we need to replace it. And if we are on top of the equipment that's inside of our network, then we will know what that life cycle is. And in most places, we need to actually plan for this life cycle replacement, 2 to 3 years in advance. So if we're fundamentally aware of all the different equipment that we have, then we'll know how to prepare those budget cycles for this lifecycle upgrade. So how do we discover our network? All right, so the first thing we need to do is, the best thing to do is get into your core switch. So I'm in my core switch right now, and the very first thing I want to do, and so my network is a brocade network. I have some other switches in there, and we'll find it. We'll find them as we go along. But so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to do a show FDP neighbor. And this is going to show me all of my Foundry Discovery Protocol neighbors. So Foundry Discovery Protocol is a brocade specific network discovery protocol. It actually will read in Cisco Discovery Protocol, CDP, and incorporate that information into my FDP neighbor display. So as we can see on here, I have an edge switch right here, and then I have two other switches that are connected. And then I have a Cisco switch. We talked about that a minute ago, and it has, looks like, two connections. And then I have an ESXi server. So ESXi actually uses CDP and puts that on the network so it can be discovered as well. So from this one thing right here, I know that I have 4 switches and an ESXi server. So what are we going to do from here? So this is where you bring up your great tool Visio, and in here I have my core switch, and I know it is an ICX 6610. And off of this switch, I have a few other switches. So we said we had 4, so I'll give myself 4 connections. Now I can actually name these connections. And I had a server in here as well, my ESXi server. So I'm going to grab a server, bring it into the mix, and connect it up to my core as well. So now I've got a basic drawing of my network as it stands right now. So I can begin to see how my network is fundamentally laid out. So how do I get more information into my network? So I can do the same command, show LLDP neighbor, and this time I can do a detail. And the details are actually going to give me a lot more information about the switch. So the ESXi server is not giving me the IP address, but the Cisco switch, so here's its name, Cisco switch, and its IP address. So now I have this information to populate into my Visio diagram. I also get the information for the other switches. So here is the 6450 that we found, that it was called Edge Switch. And there's his IP address. And then we also have another 6450, Lab 6450, and there's his IP address. And here's our 7450 and his IP address. So from this point, I can actually go in here and start populating this information into my Visio diagram. All right, so I've taken the information from my network discovery, FTP neighbor detail, and I've populated that into my diagram. So I have switch names, I have IP addresses, I have how they're connected. If I want to, I can even take it one step further, go back to my switch, and I can actually get my port numbers that these devices are connected to. So 1135 and 1136. I carry that information back over here to my Visio diagram. I can do and now I'm even beginning to populate more information into my Visio diagram. So I don't have to go find the server and trace the cables and to find out what switch port it's connected to. All I have to do is go look at my Visio diagram and I have this information. It's also a good idea to create a spreadsheet. So I like to use a spreadsheet as well. The Visio diagram is nice. There's only so much information that you can put on here before it starts getting too cluttered for you to actually see. So if you'll create yourself a spreadsheet, put switch names, IP addresses, ports that things are connected to, any other information that you find, usernames and passwords. If you put usernames and passwords in there, please encrypt your file. But these are things that you can get out of a spreadsheet pretty quickly, and you also have search features as well. So back to our switch, we did a show FDP neighbor, but not all devices use CDP or LLDP. Or CDP or FDP. Some devices use only LLDP. So we're going to do a show LLDP neighbor. And as you'll see, we have some new switches here. So we had the Cisco switch that was connected before. Here's our 6450 and our 7450. But now we've got a ProCurve and a Nortel. So the ProCurve is an HB switch, and Nortel is now an Avaya switch. So there's two more switches that we need to add to our Visio diagram. Okay, so now I've added my Nortel and my ProCurve onto my drawing, but I don't have any more information. I have their ports like we looked at before. So just like the FDP neighbor detail, there is an LLDP neighbor detail. And that gives me much granular information into the switches as before. So as we see here, here's my ProCurve. His IP address is 10.10.10.251, and my Nortel is 10.10.10.250. So I can, and it also gives me their names. So let me go into my Visio real quick and populate these. So now I have my Visio diagram populated. I added a second link here for my Cisco because it had two links going to it. So as you can see, this is a pretty simple way to start understanding how your network is totally set up. So after you get this much done of your network here, you will actually need to start logging into all of these other switches and going through the same process to see if there are switches that are connected to these switches behind them that you can't see. So we'll actually go and we'll create a new connection. And we're going to go to the 7450. So 1020, 10.1. Alright, so we're in our switch, and I'm going to change the background because this white and black drives me a little bit nuts. There. So I'm going to do a show FDP neighbor. There's my lab 6610, which is my core. And then I have a new switch. I have a lab 7250. So I'll do a detail on it. And the lab 7250 is 1020, 1027. So I go in here. Okay, so now I have it. So now you can see how my network starts to expand and starts to grow. And this helps you as a network administrator or a systems administrator to be able to troubleshoot. Because if you have a problem that's connected to something back here behind this 7250, then you're not going to need to worry about these other switches out here. Your problems are going to be somewhere here, here, or here, and on out to the internet, depending on what your problem is. But this helps you narrow down where you need to troubleshoot. It also helps you understand how your traffic flow is in your network. So one last thing I'm going to do a show LLDP neighbor on this switch, and I'll have the same two switches so I don't have any other devices hanging off of the switch. So when you do an LLDP neighbor, you're going to get things like access points, you're going to get IP phones, you're going to get some IP cameras that support LLDP. So this is going to give you a wealth of information in troubleshooting and documenting your network. I hope this has been informative for you. Thank you.